Hello, my name is Amanda, and I also go by the spiritual name Nenora, which was a name that was gifted to me when I took my oath and was initiated into the guardianship lineage that I am a part of. Now, I do think it's important for people to share their story. By sharing your story and you go through the things that you have overcome in your life, then it gives people hope that they too can overcome the things in their life. So my story begins when I was born. When I was born, I was exceptionally sick and spent a couple years in the hospital. Now, because of this, I never actually had a chance to bond and connect with my parents. I don't hold anything against them because of this. This is just the cards that I was dealt. My mom had my brother at home, who was 2.5 years at the time, and trying to drag a toddler into the hospital when you want to go visit your sick child is next to impossible, right? Like, it's just not a ideal situation for anybody to be in. Now, because of this, though, I would later discover in therapy and counseling that my abandonment issue stemmed from this exact time, right? So right from birth, that's where my abandonment issues started. And so this gave way to a lot of unhealthy self-limiting beliefs that I had. I had these beliefs that I was not good enough, that I wasn't wanted, that I would never be loved, that I would never be nurtured, that I would always be abandoned. Don't get close to people because they leave you, right? And so that would become the basis of which I would live life for a long time until I acknowledged it and accepted it and moved through it. Now, when I was released from the hospital because I was strong enough, I was introduced into a family that had ties to organized crime. And so I witnessed things that kids should never have to witness. So I'm going to give you a couple examples here. I don't share the really bad things because you can traumatize people through your trauma. And so one of the memories that I have of my father is we were in a van and not 100% sure where we were going. There were really no seats in this van. And I was crying and I was cranky and I just wanted to go home. And he literally picked me up and he held me out the side of the door while we were moving. And I just remember seeing the ground behind me and he was screaming at me in this moment. What he said, I have no idea. I don't remember that part. But I do remember him taking me and throwing me against the side of the van wall and telling me to basically sit down, shut up, and stop crying. And I remember I stopped crying. I didn't make a peep after that. And this would later become why I would have such a hard time crying when I got older, was because that was so ingrained to sit down, shut up, and don't cry. And so another one is my mom hid us in a closet. And us by me and my brother. My mom hid me and my brother in a closet because my dad proceeded to go outside, get in the car, and shoot bullets at the house. And so my mom dove behind a couch while the bullets were flying through like the wall and the windows, right? And so this was just my dad. He was abusive, he was violent, and he was just not a good person, right? So my dad also would get into doing heavy drugs, and I mean heavy drugs, and like injecting drugs. And he would eventually get my mother hooked on drugs as well. When my mom was 29, she almost left us, and she almost passed away. So, that was childhood growing up, right? And then when I was about 10 or 11-ish in that area, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, got cancer. And I remember going to the hospital and looking at her, and she terrified me. She absolutely terrified me. She didn't look like my grandmother. She was hooked up to all these machines. She was on oxygen, and she just wanted a hug. And I was petrified of her, and I held on to this little like stuffed lion, and I didn't want to go anywhere near her because I didn't know who that lady was, and I was terrified of it. And I remember when she touched me, I was like terrified, right? Because my parents forced me to hug this person, and it didn't even look like my grandmother. And so 6 months after my grandmother passed away, my father passed away. Now, this would be a blessing, right? My mom was able to take me and my brother and move away. Had he not have passed away, there would have been no way he ever would have let us go anywhere. He likely would have killed us eventually. And so because he passed away, my mom literally moved away, cut all ties with those organized crime people, and life was good for a bit. Life was what you would consider normal. Me and my brother would go biking, we'd play at a local pond, we'd catch frogs, normal kid stuff. And then in 1996, everything would change. My life would dramatically fall apart. It was Canada Day, and me and my brother were out, and we were celebrating, and we were doing fireworks, and everything was great. And then I got dropped off at home because I was only 14, and they all went back out to do whatever 17-year-olds do. And I remember my mom waking me up the next morning. And she woke me up. She told me to have a seat and that she was waiting for her brother. She was waiting for my uncle because he had gone to the hospital to identify whether Sean was in this accident. And I just remember thinking, I was just with Sean. Like, what are you talking about? And it just felt so surreal that he could be gone. And so I remember sitting and waiting and what felt like forever. I just remember thinking, oh, how long does this take? Right? The suspense of waiting, right? And I remember this memory is like etched in my brain. And my uncle took the corner to pull into the driveway. And he just took that corner so fast. And we lived in the country and it was a dirt driveway and there were stones flying everywhere and there was like dust flying everywhere. And I honestly thought he was going to crash his truck. Right? And I just remember him coming flying down the driveway as my mom is running outside. Right? My mom's running out. He's coming down. And he slams the truck into park and just leaves the door open as like he's running towards my mom. And I don't know how he managed to catch her. Even to this day, just thinking about this image always makes me teary-eyed. And I don't know how he managed to catch her before she hit the ground. It's like she just had to look at him and she knew. She just knew that, Sean was one of the kids in this accident. And for the next 4 years, life would be a blur, right? I remember I was so angry. I was so angry at Sean that he left me. He had abandoned me. He had, he said he'd always be there. He said he'd always protect me. He said that he would never leave me. He'd love me forever. And then all of a sudden, he was just gone. And I was there alone, right? And so I never really had a great connection with my mom prior, just because I never really developed it in childhood. And this would further separate us because we both just felt so utterly alone. And so for the next 4 years, I would be addicted to drugs. I would be addicted to alcohol. And I was very angry. I became very violent. I ended up getting expulsion, which meant that I was not allowed to return to school. I wasn't just expelled. I got expulsion. I was not allowed on any York Region School Board property until I was 25. And so I left school, got a job. It was probably about a year and a half after Sean had passed away that my mom had like a nervous breakdown. She just had a nervous breakdown. After he had passed, she had just dove into work, repressed everything, and eventually her body just collapsed and she had a nervous breakdown. And I ended up getting a job and helping her pay her bills so she could keep her house. Right? So That's kind of where I was at in that moment. And my mindset at that time was I was chasing death, right? I had this broken mindset that if I killed myself and I died, that my mom would take her life and then we'd be one big happy family again, right? And so that's kind of where I was. And so all the decisions that I made were based with that mindset. So I put myself in bad situations. I was raped countless times. And the one that stands out the most was this time there was 3 guys and we were in a truck and we were driving around and we ended up on some country dirt road in the middle of like nowhere. And they pulled over, they pulled me out of the truck, and they basically proceeded to just pass me around, and it was hours. It was hours of torment and agony and being abused in every single way imaginable. And so when they were finally done with me, like hours later, they literally left me on the side of this road, and I was just like covered in my own blood, right? And this older couple, this elderly couple found me the next morning, and they picked me up off the road and they took me to the hospital. And I'll never forget this older lady. This older lady, she looked at me and she was like, "You're not defined by the bad things that happen to you. And you can choose to turn your life around, but it's a personal choice." Right? And so that was her message. And I never forgot it. And so I don't even remember how old I was trying to think of how old I was when all that was going on, but I can't even remember. And so the other thing that happened to me in this period is I ended up getting pregnant when I was 16. And I just remember thinking to myself, I am a big mess up. I am addicted to drugs. I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm an angry person. I can't bring a child into this world. Like, I cannot bring a child into this. And so I made the difficult decision to go through with an abortion. And that still affects me to this day. I can't tell you there's a day that goes by that I don't think about it. Right? And so even though I've done a lot of healing around it, it still is there regularly on a daily basis. I think about it. And so this is adolescence. This is my teenage years, right? Like, I put myself in bad situations, bad things happen to me, and I deliberately put myself in these situations. And so I was probably about 18 when I started to look into different spiritual things, right? Like any teenager, I started looking into tarot cards and crystals and spell work and magic books and, all of this type of stuff. Now, I think because I was looking into this stuff and dabbling in this little stuff that I aligned myself to my ex-husband. My ex-husband was born into a magical family. His mom studied in Egypt, and so he was a very spiritual person. And so he showed me a world where energy doesn't die. It can only be transformed and transmuted. And so this gave way to a lot of healing that I needed to do around the fact that even though Sean physically was gone, his energy was still present. Right? And so that actually allowed me to kind of move on and look into different avenues of healing. So in 2001, I got pregnant with my daughter. Didn't know that I was pregnant until I was 7 months. So didn't have a whole hell of a lot of time to prepare for this. Did contemplate, adoption briefly, just because I still was like, I wasn't doing hard drugs then, but I was still drinking on occasion, and I still felt like I was not capable of raising a child. right? I didn't even know what a normal childhood was, given everything that I had been through. What type of role model could I possibly be for a kid? And so when I gave birth to her and this incredible wave of love took over, I just remember looking at her thinking, oh my God, this little human is going to depend on me for the rest of my life, right? And so I really turned my life around and said, I need to do healing. So I did do some therapy and some counseling and kind of started that healing then. And then in 2003, I gave birth to my son. And shortly after I gave birth to him, I actually experienced postpartum depression. I was young. I had 2 kids. I didn't know who I was. I was trying to do this healing and this therapy, and I felt disconnected with my therapist because like I had all of this trauma and all of this stuff that was going on in my life, and they couldn't like emphasize with me, right? They couldn't connect. Like they hadn't experienced anything like I had experienced, and so I had a really hard time connecting to my therapist and my counselors. And so I left my husband for a couple months, and because I just didn't know. I didn't know where to turn. I just felt so lost. Here I was, young mother, traumatic past, 2 young kids, right? So, it's the field for this type of stuff. And so I had to work through my postpartum depression, right? I had to work through that, and I had to, work and get myself healthy again. And then, me and my husband got back together. Now, from about 18 until now, I have embarked on an incredible spiritual journey, right? And so I was, like I said, initiated into the guardianship, and I've done countless courses and seminars. I've done all of the courses for the most part through the Institute for Inner Studies, which is Master Chua Kok Sui's work. And I also studied with Drumbelow Melchizedek and his team with his Flower of Life and Earth Sky Heart, Awakening the Illuminated Heart. I've done almost every level of the Human Awareness Institute, and like just countless and countless and countless of spiritual advancements. And so I've definitely spent like tens of thousands of dollars on developing my soul, right? So I do believe if you develop your soul, you develop your life. And so that was my primary focus. And so that was my beginning, right? So my beginning of life was organized crime, crazy trauma, which then led to the death of my brother, which then led to me chasing death and making poor decisions and experiencing rape and abortions, becoming a young mother, addiction issues, right? And so that was like how my life started, right? Like that's all up until like 18. Right? Then 18 forward, I started this incredible spiritual journey. And so I pull a lot of my experience and my life coaching and stuff from all the different traumas and stuff that I've been through, but then I always pull in all of my spiritual aspects as well. Now, another huge portion of my life is in 2005, me and my ex-husband moved into an open relationship. So we went through and experienced like swinging, and we experienced like just different aspects of what it means to be in an open relationship. And then eventually that kind of merged into what would be considered polyamory, which is ethical non-monogamy. We were in some relationships where there was like 3 of us in a relationship. There would be like me, my husband, and we would have like another female in the relationship with us. Very complicated relationship dynamics, right? You have like, there's like 9 different relationships when you're in like a trilateral relationship, right? So very, very complicated relationship dynamics. Now, the only reason I want to bring this up is when I embarked on this type of relationship. It gave me an opportunity that most people will never get to experience. I had the ability to work through my insecurities, my judgments, my jealousies that most people will never get a chance to work on, because most people are in monogamous relationships. You don't have to worry about jealousies to that degree, right? You don't like, so I had to work on crazy insecurities. I had to work on my insecurities of I'm not good enough. Why does he need to have another partner? Why am I not able to satisfy? What is wrong with me? Am I broken? Why is he not attracted to me? Right? Like, I had to work on all of these like insecurities. Like, and I mean, these are deep rooted insecurities, right? And a lot of these insecurities were the self-limiting beliefs that were created when I was an infant in the hospital feeling abandoned, right? And so that's where I'll never be loved, I'll never be wanted. You know, you can't trust people because they leave you. I'm always going to be alone. All of these things became my self-limiting beliefs. And then when I dove in and had to deal with all of these different insecurities, this was when I was really able to actually put the pieces together and realize that something that you would consider so insignificant, here I am before I'm 2, and would be the basis of how I was living my life as an adult. And I don't even remember it because most people don't have any memories pre being like 4, right? And so it gave me an opportunity. When we got into this polyamorous relationship, I had an incredible journey into self. A journey into self that is denied to most people because most people don't ever have to go that deep, right? So in polyamory, there's a word and it is called compersion. Compersion is the ability to feel happiness for somebody else's happiness. And I actually was able to get to the point where I was happy with my ex-husband's relationships that he was having with other women because I was so secure in myself. I was so secure with my relationship with him. I was secure with my relationship with me that relationship did not define anything about me. And so it allowed me this incredible opportunity to deal with judgments. I had to deal with the judgments knowing that people were going to see my husband out in public with what would be considered his mistress, right? I can't tell you how many phone calls I got about, oh my God, I think your husband's cheating on you, right? Because people don't understand ethical non-monogamy, right? And even when I would explain it to them, they'd be like, oh, I couldn't do that. I'd be too jealous. Right? And so I had to deal with the judgments from people judging me for being in a relationship like this. And then I had to deal with my jealousies. I literally had to deal with all of my own insecurities. It was my insecurities that led to my jealousies. And so this lifestyle gave me an incredible opportunity to deep dive into my subconscious, to deep dive into my psyche, and to reveal aspects of myself that probably most people never get a chance to go that deep into. Now, it also would be polyamory that would eventually end our marriage, ironically enough. It was polyamory that would end up being the catalyst for things changing for us. So like I said, it was 2005 and we started going into these types of relationships. In 2018, when my kids were much older, right? So up until 2018, I didn't even have a chance to even consider polyamory. I was a full-time mom, full-time worker, right? I'd gone back to school and I had gotten my law clerk. I still work in the areas of wills and estates. And then I was a full-time mom that had to, care for my kids and bathe my kids and feed my kids and clean the house and, do all the motherly wifey duties type of thing, right? But then I also was like a spiritual mentor, a spiritual guide. I ran workshops and seminars. We had people constantly in the house taking lessons. We would hold a 5-day transformative retreat that would take up like lots of time because I had like courses to write and workshops to do, books to create, manuals to create. And so I didn't even have time. I was already pretty spent when it came to life. Right? I didn't have time to even consider polyamory or another friggin' relationship. It just was not happening. It was not on my scale. And so, meanwhile, from like 2005 up until 2018, I was deep diving. I was doing all of this incredible work on myself. I was literally deep diving into myself, learning to love myself, learning to live by my choices, learning healthy boundaries, learning all of my self-limiting beliefs and my self-empowering beliefs and, healing all of these traumas and putting all of the fragmented parts of myself back together. And so in 2018, I started to actually consider, was I polyamorous, right? Was this something that I could actually do? Right? Because up until now, I didn't know whether I was polyamorous or not. Do I want to be in another relationship with somebody? Do I not want to be in another relationship with somebody? And so the only way for you to know this is to experience this. How do you know if you don't know? Right? And so I started branching out. I started making connections. I started to develop, friendships and connections. We went to Polywood and I talked about compersion and what it was like to deal with like insecurities and jealousies. And I wrote a whole workshop on, all of these things that you have to do if you seriously want to get into a polyamorous relationship. And so I taught that workshop at Polywood. Like, I think I taught it twice. And then, COVID happened and things got all locked up. And so in around like 2019, like things really started to become unstable in our relationship, and I just kept, I was of the opinion that I had worked through my insecurities, I had worked through my judgments, I had worked through my jealousies and envies, and, I had to integrate it and I had to go through all this. And so now it was, my ex-husband's time. He had to go through this, right? And so things were pretty turbulent. He tried to put restrictions on that I was only allowed to date women, and I was like, well, how do you figure? And he's like, well, because women are more bisexual than men are. And I was like, yeah, but I'm attracted to this man, not this woman. Right. And so it wasn't like going anywhere. And I said, we can take it slow. We can take it, but like, you're going to have to work on these things. Like, I had to work on these things. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to feel not good enough, to feel not loved, to feel unwanted. But these are things you have to work on if this is the lifestyle that you want to live in. And so basically, long story short, he wasn't really willing to do these things. I placed some pretty healthy boundaries, basically stating that, I would not ask permission to talk on the phone, right? Like, he tried to make it so that my phone calls were all speakerphone. Wasn't allowed to have private conversations. He had access to all of my accounts, my social media accounts, my text messages. So I couldn't even have a private conversation because he would read all of my conversations, right? He would take my phone and he would read all of my text messages. And if I talked on the phone, it had to be at home with him present on speakerphone, right? Like, I couldn't even talk to my mom without it being on speakerphone, right? So I ended up putting some healthy boundaries down. I said that I would not ask permission to talk on the phone. I would have conversations with whoever I wanted to have conversations with. I was changing my passwords because not only is this a breach of my privacy, but this is a breach of their privacy. They're having a conversation with me, not a conversation with us, right? And then those boundaries would be the end of our relationship. Those boundaries were too much for him to accept. And so he told me he wanted a divorce. And so I said, fine, that's where we're going with this. And so I just remember, you know, like that was my journey. That was my journey through polyamory. And I'm grateful for it. I'm thankful for it because I had an opportunity that many will never, ever get to go that deep into those areas of their life, right? I think everybody should have the ability to go in that deep to those areas, right? Because the freedom that you get when you know yourself on such a deep core level is beyond anything that you could put into words. You either experience it or you don't. Right? That's what it is. It is true freedom when you can honestly say, people can judge me any way they want and I don't care. Accept me or love me, hate me, whatever. Right? And so you eventually get to that place. And I don't think I would have been able to go that deep if I didn't go through this portion of my life. Right? And so, you know, when I look back at our 21-year relationship now, I can see a lot of control, right? I see a lot of, you know, where I gave up parts of myself, right? I gave up parts of myself to be in a relationship with somebody that ultimately just wanted to control me, that wanted me to be what they wanted me to be, that wanted me to act a certain way, behave a certain way, think a certain way. And when I would go against the status quo, then, you know, things didn't get well, you know. And I used to be a big believer in choose your battles. I used to say this all the time, just choose your battles. I don't say that anymore. Now what I say is, if you have to get to the point where you're saying to yourself, choose your battles, then you know you need to actually battle that. Because you choose every battle. Every battle you actually choose. Because if you don't, you're going to repress these things. And if you're repressing things, then that means you're not being authentic to who you are at your core. If you're not choosing the battle when it comes up, if you're not addressing it when it comes up, it will eventually keep coming up until you address it. These are lessons, right? And so I no longer believe in choose your battles. You choose every battle and you work through every battle. Because if you don't, you're not being true and authentic to who you are. It's bothering you for a reason, right? And so that is one of the biggest lessons I think that I got out of my marriage falling apart is now when I'm in partnership, I choose every battle. If something's bothering me, I address it. There's no way I'll ever let anybody control me to that degree ever again, because I'm going to stay true and authentic to who I am at my core. Right? And so this is who I am. This is the experience I have. These are all the outcomes that I have had to over and get over and endure and go through. Right? And so I have deep dived into my subconscious, into my psyche. I have created that relationship that I needed with self in order for myself to trust me. Right? I can speak from experience when I say, I know what it's like to go through a dark night of the soul, and I know how to navigate it, and I know how to help you get through it, right? Because I've been there. I can honestly say that I have lived it. I didn't read it in a book. And that was, I think, why I went and got all my credentials in inner child work and trauma recovery and relationship dynamics and loss and grief coaching, was because I lived it. This is my life experience. This is my life's work. This is what I've gone through. And the credentials just help me help other people to walk through it as well. So this is me. This is who I am. And I just wanted to put myself out there, tell you my story. And hopefully it gives you a little bit of hope that if I can go through what I've been through, then I have faith and hope that you can go through what you're going through. And if I can help you, if you think I can help you, then please reach out. We can schedule a call and we can see where it goes. We can see if I'm a good fit for you or if you're a good fit for me. Like it has to be reciprocal, right? It goes both ways. And if I don't feel like I can assist you, then I might refer you to somebody that I think can assist you, right? So I hope you are having the greatest day. Thank you for listening to me go on about my story, and I'm wishing you a fabulous week.